The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gam Podcast Network is brought to you by Fantasy. They bring new offer for new customers. Play just $5 and get $50 bonus funds. It's promo code SGPN. And welcome everybody to the Tennis Gam Podcast here on the Sports Gam Podcast Network. It's currently Tuesday evening, September 16th, around 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm always Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the two events post-US Open. We are officially back for the men's tour. We're going to be going to Asia. We have two events in Chengdu and Hangzhou. So we're going to break down both those actual tournaments in a second. No quarter odds, so apologies there, but we have actual outrights. We're going to stick with those, but no quarters, so apologies. I'll still dive into the draw in general, but no actual markets for that, so apologies, but it is what it is. So before we get into any of the actual tournament previews, I do want to remind you once again to support the show. Like subscribing on YouTube. A reminder, does leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple. So if you want the podcast audio only, that's fine. Check out Spotify and Apple. Leave a rating and review and you do so. And once again, of course, welcome to the show on YouTube or even on Twitter as we simulcast the show on the SGPN Twitter account. Pause reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great merch for the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Sweatshirts, t-shirts, mugs, different colors, very affordable, and recommend getting yourself something there on the merch store. Plus, a reminder, you can also check out all the podcasts on the network in a very easy, I'd say, way, and you can also do it for free. Check out the app on the App Store and get easy access to our podcasts and free picks. So check that out. Once again, absolutely free. Just go to the App Store and get the SGPN app. So starting off with the lock and dog pick recap from the US Open men's final. Overall, a decent final for us. We ended up losing the lock with the over 38.5 games at minus 138. Didn't work out as both players won sets, but decisively, and eventually Alcaraz did win in 4. But we did win the dog, plus 220. We had Alcaraz to win, and both players win a set at plus 220. Got there easily as Alcaraz dropped the second set, then coasted, and eventually did win in 4. So Alcaraz got the job done. Another U.S. Open title, officially number 1 in the world again. He surpassed Sinner, and most importantly for us, ended up cashing the outright as we had Alcaraz to win the U.S. Open at plus 195. A reminder, only bet on Alcaraz and Sinner in Grand Slams. Did it again, and Alcaraz got the job done. So Alcaraz and Sinner fully completed the calendar sweep because they've been winning every Grand Slam. The only question is which one of them will win which. But either way, Alcaraz got the job done, got some revenge for Wimbledon, and was able to win another U.S. Open title. So not really much to dive into for the match in itself because it was very lopsided as Alcaraz seemed to be better throughout the entire match. Felt like he was one step ahead. He had a bit of a slip up there in the second set. Sinner raised his level and then immediately got buried in the third set, 6-1, and then Alcaraz coasted from there. So Sinner didn't really serve that well. He only landed 48% of his first serves. Alcaraz, by comparison, did land 61%. Truth is, though, Sinner just felt like he was behind the entire match as Alcaraz ended up breaking him 5 times. He forced 11 breakpoint chances. Sinner only forced 1 breakpoint in the entire match. Now, we got the break. It helped us win the dog play, but still, Alcaraz was serving very well, and it felt like Sinner was really just out of sorts. Didn't play great, and Alcaraz beat him. I'd say Alcaraz played at probably a B-plus level, and it felt like Sinner played at around a C-minus, and that's not good enough. So nice job by Alcaraz getting the job done, and we move on into the hardcourt slate in Asia. Now, seeing some comment section here, looking at Joe stopping by, and I see Adam stopping by too. Yeah, Joe, we just started, so you didn't miss anything. We started 4 minutes ago. So welcome to the show, and Adam's joining as well. If you are catching the show, don't forget to leave a comment because I am going to read them as we are in the live stream. But either way, hopefully you ended up cashing with me for the US Open final. Anyway, time to move on into the actual Asia swing as we have Chengdu and Hangzhou. So I'll go through the Chengdu preview. Then I'll do an ad read. Then I'll do the Hangzhou. Then we'll get into the lock and dog picks. So for Chengdu, starting off with the actual recent winners, you might remember Shang actually won the event last year, beating Musetti. And you're looking at Zverev, won the year prior against Safulin. Then you ended up having a gap with COVID, but Carreño Busta ended up beating Bublik in the final a couple of years ago. So Chengdu is a pretty fun tournament in general, starting at around 1 a.m. Eastern. So once again, if you want to place bets, don't forget to do them before you go to bed, because a lot of these matches are going to be taking place very early, I'd say, on the East Coast in the morning, so keep that in mind. But for the actual outright odds here, you have Musetti, who lost in the final last year. He's the pretty decent favorite here at around plus 200, as the next closest guy is Nakashima at around 6-1. So you have Nakashima 6-1, Thompson at 8-1, you have Nori at 11-1, Perricard at 12-1, Monfils at 12-1, Darderi at 16-1, Dzanchop at 16-1. Greek Sport 16-1, Giron 25-1, Sonego 25-1, Hell's 25-1, Shang defending champion at 35-1, and you kind of get the point. So the question is, do I like any of the favorites and first starters? Even though Musetti made the final last year, and even though he made a pretty respectable run in the U.S. Open for losing to Sinner in straight sets, I'm not taking him at 2-1. That's a price that's way too cheap for Musetti on hard court. I get that he's been playing better recently, and I just think at the end of the day, there's no value at 2-1. His draw is okay. I'm going to say it's not great. We know Otney made a great run in Cincinnati, and Prismic can be a bit dangerous, and that would be his matchup in the second round. Otney, if he's healthy, we'll see what he can do. I know he hasn't played since Cincinnati, had to skip the U.S. Open because of injury, but that's not exactly the matchup you want potentially in the second round, is either Prismic or Otman. So I'm not a fan of the draw for Musetti. Same section as Dzanchop, who I know also is not great in Davis Cup, as he lost to Cerundolo in straight sets. Point is, I do think Musetti's path can be tricky if you want to go for a Cinderella option. I think Musetti being the plus 200 favorite suggests this could be a quite open tournament, because he is not, in my opinion, a great hardcourt player. He might have gotten better on the surface, but I don't exactly like the price here at 2-1. I think it should be higher. I'll pass on Musetti for the favorite option for the event. Moving on, though, to Nakashima at 6-1. Now, Nakashima, I actually think, has a pretty decent draw. I'll point out it's not an amazing foolproof draw, but I do think it's pretty good in general. So Nakashima, by comparison here, just trying to find the exact draw here. He has a bye in the first round, then either Shang or Burrs, which I know can sound a bit difficult because Shang's defending champion. He's constantly hurt. I don't trust him to be healthy, and Bergs, I think, is fine. The point is Nakashima would be favored against either guy, and I think that you can argue that Nakashima, for the price point, is worth something in the field. I understand that he has been a pretty frustrating player because the serve's great. We know the forehand can be solid. The rally tolerance not great, but it feels like he should be better than he actually is. The talent's there, though, and I do think the draw's not bad. Depends if you actually trust Shang or not health-wise. I don't, because even though he won a title here last year, he's been hurt constantly around the clock. I don't trust him here, and Bergs, I think his serve is going to let him down. Give me Nakashima to advance past those two guys, and I think that Sonego, I'll mention in a second. You have Giron and Quinn. Giron's been terrible. Quinn's not very good. And Cerundolo did just win a hardcourt challenger randomly, but we know that he's a clay specialist, so Sonego should look pretty sharp there. So I'm going to go with that section. I have a couple of people that I am looking at for the immediate, I'd say, section there. And for the outrights, once again, I think you're looking at a pretty interesting tournament where you can see a couple of guys making Cinderella runs. I am going to go Nakashima at 650. I think the price is good enough. The bottom half of the draw is quite weak. Darderi is the highest seed at the bottom, and he, of course, is a clay specialist. So with that being said, I will go with the bottom half there. Give me Nakashima, and I know it can be frustrating. I think the draw is okay, and I think the serve can play very well here. So I don't mind Nakashima at 650, which I found shopping around, but I am going to go with another guy in that immediate section. I am going to go Sonego at 25-1. First event post-U.S. Open. I know some guys have played some challengers. Most guys have been sitting, waiting for the return of the ATP Tour. With that being said, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to take some long shots or some guys who might be a bit streaky with upside, in my opinion. So Sonego at 25-1. I know last year we ended up hitting on him with Winston-Salem. We'll try to do it again here in Chengdu. Draw's okay. I mean, Cerundolo did win a hardcore challenger, but Sonego's better on hardcore. Giron or Quinn don't really scare me. And I do think whoever wins that Sonego and Nakashima match in the quarterfinals should beat whoever's coming out of the quarters for the bottom quarter, which is Darderi or Nori or Thompson. Thought about Nori potentially at 11-1, but to be honest, I don't trust them at all, and I kind of wanted a bigger price. I'll pass on them, but I'll go with Sonego here at 25-1 to join Nakashima, take two guys from one quarter. I'll ignore the fourth quarter, and hopefully we get into a good spot for a pretty decent matchup in the semis to get, I don't want to say a bye, but a decent opportunity to make it into a final. Now, I am going to point out there was one other guy I do have in the bottom, but only because I found a rogue line, which I have to mention. So I did target heavily the bottom half of the draw. Greek Sport is a bit inconsistent with his fitness, but I do think that he's a good player. Musetti, I think, can still make a deep run. I'm not picking him at the price, but it wouldn't shock me if he still ended up making a respectable run. So instead of going with the top half, I only went bottom half here. So I have Nakashima at 650, Sonego at 25-1. I mentioned before, I saw Thompson at 8-1. However, BetMGM hung 18-1, which I do like, so I'll go with the rogue number there for Thompson. I understand his health can also be up and down. He's been kind of in and out of, I'd say, injuries for the last couple of months, but we know he can win. We saw him win a hardcore title in Mexico before, and I do think that he can potentially take advantage of a pretty decent draw. For Thompson, he has Darderi in the second round after a qualifier in the first round. I think he'll be favored over Darderi. Then maybe Norrie, but Norrie's with Hallis and O'Connell could be tricky. So I don't mind Thompson for the 18-1 price solely for that price. And I'll go with those three as my outrights for the event. Not going top half, though. I think Greek Sport has a good game for the courts here, but we saw him really just flame out of the U.S. Open, losing to Manarino immediately. We saw him deal with some injuries beforehand. Not really sold on Greek Sport's form right now, fitness-wise, and I believe he did not participate in Davis Cup action either. So not really interested in him there. The top half, though, is pretty weak, but I didn't really see many guys I wanted to take. Pericard has been pretty bad this season. Monfils, I don't really trust him at all based on current form. Shevchenko's not good enough. Maybe Wong the Cinderella run, but I don't really trust him either. Dzanschulp's a head case. I didn't see many guys I would actually take to win the event from the top half, maybe to reach the final. But I do think whoever gets out of the bottom half should win the event, in my opinion, based on the actual talent comparing top to bottom. So for that reason, give me three guys in the bottom half. Nakashima at 650. Give me Thompson at the rogue 18-1 on BetMGM. And give me Sonego at 25-1. Anyway, before we get into Hangzhou, our reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBook.ag, using to bet on a bunch of different sports. They have football, college football. They have a prop builder, so build some props there for different sports. They have a motto, which is pretty simple and something we can agree with. Bet on anything, anywhere, anytime. They have a lot of easy deposits and payouts with crypto. And a reminder, you can also head to the website, MyBook.ag, use the code SGPN for 100% bet bonus, $500 for new customers. MyBook.ag, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Novig, America's #1 sports futures market. Since Novig's an exchange, we're getting some of the best prices available in the Repo states. Download the Novig app. Get $50 when you spend just $5. If you use our promo code SGPN, get on the action with Novig, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Cam podcast. Finish going through the outrights for Chengdu. Time to move on into Hangzhou. So this one is a newer event. They had one iteration of it last year, and Cilic did beat Zhang. So keep in mind, serving can really dictate who succeeds here because Cilic and Zhang made the inaugural final, and both of them are pretty good servers. Keep that in mind. Cilic actually was kind of off the grid, came back, and he won, which is kind of shocking. But either way, Cilic and Zhang used their serve. We saw 2 tie breaks in the final, by example, 7-6, 7-6, and you might see a bunch of big serving dictate who makes good runs or poor runs in this tournament. Now, for the outrights, mentioning the odds here. So for starters, you have Rublev as the favorite at 4-1. You have Medvedev at you have Rublev at 3-1. Medvedev at 4-1. You have Bublik at 450. Berrettini is back at 9-1. He's not played since Wimbledon, but he is back. Moutette's at a 12-1. Korda is at 16-1 also, who got injured recently. Tien at plus 2,000. Kovacevic at 25-1. I know the final in Mexico earlier this year, but he's available at 25-1. Manarino is at 25-1 off a good run in the U.S. Open. You have Cilic at 25-1 trying to defend his title. Kaza 28-1. Bu 28-1, and you get the point. So for the actual draw here, starting off with Rublev, we have a couple of head cases in the event. The real word I'd use for the top favorites here, the word I'll use is uncertainty. I think you're looking at a situation where you have a bunch of guys who are simply put talented but untrustworthy. Rublev, we know, can be a head case. I know that he's got Safin now in his coaching staff. But Rublev at 3-1, I'll get back to in a second. Medvedev finally fired his coach. Thank God. We'll see if the new coach does anything, but I do think Medvedev could be interesting here if he's able to keep his mental composure and if he's able to serve well. But I need to see him with his new coach first before I actually pull the trigger there for that price. So I am going to skip Medvedev. I feel like there's no value. The draw is also not great because Medvedev would have a bye, then Cilic or the qualifier is playing, then probably Mannarino or Wu or Korda. So really not a great draw for Medvedev. And look, I was hoping he'd get a new coach to help with something. I need a bit of a sample size here. I got nothing to go with, so Medvedev will pass on. Not a fan of the draw. Cilic, if he serves well, maybe can beat him. You have Mannarino, Korda, maybe if he's healthy. A lot of options, so I'm not a fan of the immediate quarter that Medvedev's in. I'll pass on him at 4-1. Bublik, I would have taken. However, he got injured in Davis Cup action and actually lost to Kwon. He retired midway through the second set. So Bublik might not be healthy, so he might withdraw. We'll see what happens. But the fact that he ended up losing as a massive favorite in Davis Cup action against Kwon. Now, Kwon I like as a player. He went off the grid for military service for Korea. But still, the point is Bublik was down a set and a break, and he ended up quitting because he got injured. So I don't really trust Bublik's health right now. So that's why it's important to monitor Davis Cup action, to keep an eye out for injuries. And Bublik did get hurt. So I do think that Bublik is not really an option for me. I'll pass on him at 450. Can't trust him with the current durability concerns. Berrettini hasn't played in a while. It worked for Cilic last year as he came back and he ended up winning the title. Will I pick Berrettini? I'm not going to. I don't trust him physically. Yes, the serve can be dangerous. Yes, his game translates well to the courts here. Do I trust his fitness? No. We haven't seen the guy in a while. At least Cilic played some challengers. Berrettini's been off the grid since Wimbledon. So I'm not going to pick a guy who's going to be fully rusty coming back onto the tour. A qualifier, then either Bu or Zhang. Decent draw there, but still, that could be a really interesting quarter there because Berrettini and Bublik are together, and maybe you'll see Bublik drop out, and you might see Berrettini get hurt. So who knows? But I do think you're looking at a good opportunity for the bottom half to succeed, the fourth quarter especially. Because I just mentioned a second ago in Chengdu, I was going to fade the fourth quarter there because I do think that there's an opportunity for whoever wins the third quarter to be a decent favorite over the fourth quarter winner in the semifinal matchup. I feel the same way here in this event, but kind of bizarro. I got the fourth quarter being a pretty solid option for some long shots. So I'll mention my long shot there in a second, but for my favorites, I am going to go with Rublev at 3-1. The draw is very nice. I understand that he can be a head case. I get that he is a guy who can really frustrate you as a fan. The draw is very, very generous. So he has Kovacevic or Nardi after a bye in the first round. I think he's better than Kovacevic. I know Kovacevic beat him in Mexico. Rublev kind of melted down. Kovacevic, though, hasn't really done much since. And I think Rublev, with the pace of the courts here, should be able to serve better than Kovacevic en route to a win. But I like his overall draw. He beat Tien in the rematch they had on hardcourt a couple months ago. I think that's a decent option. You have Tien, you have Navone, you have Sun, and qualifier. It's really a decent path for Rublev to the quarters, and his immediate half would be either Mutet, Kaza, or Arnaldi, DeZumer or Echeverry, or Carabelli or qualifier. So the second quarter here is an absolute joke. So I think whoever wins the first quarter should have a decent path into the semis and beyond. So give me Rublev here at 3-1. Now I am going to go with a couple long shots. I'm going to include a guy that beat Rublev earlier this year. I'm going Tien at plus 2,000. Main reason, said a second ago, I think the second quarter is absolute garbage, and I think they're looking at a good opportunity for Tien if he wins the first quarter to make a deep run. So basically, I'm going to hedge my Rublev option because I can't trust him on his own. Give me Tien, who I think can make it into the quarters and onward. Tien against Mutet would be interesting. I think you're looking at a good opportunity for Tien to potentially be a Cinderella in this environment. We know he's a good hardcourt player. The serve can be weak, which maybe will not translate well, but he's a great rallier, and I do think if Rublev does implode again and Tien's there to potentially beat Kovacevic, if Kovacevic pulls off the upset, I think Tien at plus 2,000 is an option when you're looking at him being maybe a favorite in the semis against either Mutet or somebody else. Give me Tien as my first long shot here at plus 2,000. But I mentioned a second ago, I'm going to return to the final quarter, the fourth one. Give me my boy. I see a guy mentioning in the comment section here. I see Willie talking about how the winner of Mannarino and Wu is going to go deep. I agree with you. I'm picking Mannarino at 25-1. I was waiting for him to regain form. I've been mentioning it on the podcast before during the U.S. Open. I'm really excited to bet on Mannarino in these smaller events post-U.S. Open, and I do think that he can collect a trophy at some point. Give me 25-1. I understand Wu is now the favorite, actually. Mannarino went from -150 to even money. So I understand Wu, when healthy, can be dangerous. He actually won the only head-to-head meeting against Mannarino a couple years ago. Do I trust Wu's fitness? No. He hasn't really beaten anybody recently. He made it to the third round of qualifying, got buried by Kim. I like Kim in general, but the point is Mannarino made it pretty far in the U.S. Open, beating Shelton, etc. I think Mannarino is in better form. I think that he can frustrate his opponents, and the fact that Korda has been injured too, Wu can't stay healthy. Medvedev, we know, is an absolute head case, and you have a pretty similar style of play between Mannarino and Medvedev. I think it's doable. I think 25-1 makes sense, actually, for Mannarino, but I would not take Wu based on durability issues. I would have considered him if you could turn the injury sliders off. I like Wu a lot, actually. Him and Shang, I think, are very talented players, but they just can't stay healthy made of glass. So with that being the case, give Mannarino as my long shot here at 25-1. I agree with Willie. I think that there could be an opportunity for that bottom quarter if Medvedev's going to struggle again, and I do think that Wu or Mannarino could be poised for a deep run. I'll go Mannarino, trust the durability a bit more. If this match goes deep into a third set, I question Wu physically over the course of that third set. I'll go for Mannarino personally, but I don't really know why so much steam has come in on Wu besides him being from China and him being healthy, allegedly. I don't really know, but I did notice the line move 50 cents. So I'm going to go against the line move. I'll go Mannarino at 25-1. I think that he is dangerous for the next couple of months. So either way, once again, my outrights for Chengdu and for Hangzhou. I'm going pretty light here. First events back after U.S. Open, a lot of layoffs. I'm not going crazy with the outrights, so keep that in mind. But for Chengdu, I'm going with Nakashima at 650. I'm going with Thompson at 18-1, and I am going to go with Sonego at 25-1. For Hangzhou, I'm going to go with one favorite and two long shots. Give me Rublev at 3-1. Give me Tien at plus 2,000. And I will go with Mannarino at 25-1. Anyway, it's going to wrap it up for the outrights. I'll move on into the lock and dog picks. Before we get into that, the reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use them to play your pick'em entries. Win 500 times your entry. Pick higher or lower on your favorite player stats. Available for a bunch of sports. They have esports. They have tennis. They have baseball, basketball, you name it. Bunch of different options for Underdog for entries. Also, a reminder, they have a new offer for new customers. Play just $5, $50 bonus funds. Use promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. They're off to a great start in college football and the NFL. They have a new leaderboard system with weekly cash prizes for tracking your bets in the app. Track 5 bets of the same type from any model, and you can win $1K. So once again, build a model, track 5 plays, and you're entered into the giveaway. The picks do not have to win. You solely have to actually press the track button. That's it. All you have to do for a chance to win $1K. And also a reminder, you can use the promo code SGPN25 or download the Rhythm app for a quarter off your first month. Download the Rhythm app. And a reminder, use the promo code SGPN25 for a quarter off your first month. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the outrights for Chengdu and Hangzhou. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. So for the lock, I'm going to go with a player who I don't really like that much, but I like the actual matchup. I'm going to the Norrie match. I'm going to go with Norrie to win in straight sets at -142. Norrie's been quietly good lately. He's won 4 of his last 5. The only loss against Djokovic. Won a couple matches in the U.S. Open. He looked good in the Davis Cup. Yes, he was against a couple of no-name Polish guys, but you know what? A win's a win. The fact is Norrie's been playing good tennis, and I do think that his game is better than his opponent. He's against a complete unknown, but he was able to go through the Davis Cup, ended up winning against Korda in 2 sets and a retirement in the U.S. Open, beat Comasagna in 4, and then he won a set off Djokovic, something he really never does, and he ended up losing in 4. But he was able to win in straight sets both times at the Davis Cup. I like how he's playing. And he's against a guy named Zhu, who is a complete unknown for the most part. Zhu has not won an ATP match since last October. And on top of that, he's 4-4 in his last 8 matches. So even in challenger level, he's not been good lately. And none of them are ATP matches. So you're looking at Zhu, who went 3 sets in a win in the Davis Cup action against a complete unknown. But he's a pretty volatile player, a lot of firepower, a lot of errors, and I do think that Norrie will extract enough errors to get the job done here in this matchup. But minus 142 for a guy that I think is simply put more reliable than his opponent. 0 ATP wins since October 2024. I get that he had an okay showing here last year with Zhu, but he's 4-4 in the last 8, not really against good competition. And Norrie's been good. I mean, Norrie did win a set off Djokovic, won the first 2 rounds of the US Open. I think 142 is kind of cheap here. And I think that Norrie, even though we know he is really annoying to back at times, his boring play style should result in a bunch of free points based on unforced errors from Zhu, and Zhu might start pressing. Give me Norrie in straight sets here at minus 142 against a challenger player, basically. Not a good one at minus 142 as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to stick with Chengdu, and I am going to go with a big server. Can be frustrating because Perricard has been underwhelming recently, but you know what? He made a decent run in Winston-Salem, as he was able to make it to the semis. But I'll go with him in straight sets here at plus 143. So Perricard said a second ago, made the semis in Winston-Salem. So I do like how he kind of found some rhythm before the US Open. Lost to Musetti in 4. Musetti looked pretty good in the event, so kind of a bad draw for him. But Perricard, I think, can frustrate his opponent here because he's against a clay specialist in Misolic. Now, Misolic has had a good season, I'll admit it. However, he is the definition of a clay specialist. He has not won a hard-court ATP match since October 2023. It's been roughly 2 years since he's won a hard-court match on the ATP level, 1-4 lifetime in this environment. On top of that, he actually dropped out of the Davis Cup for Austria with illness. So he might not be healthy. We'll see. I'm assuming he should be, but there's a chance he's not. So the point is you have a guy who's a clay specialist who has not won an ATP hard-court match in basically 2 years, and he had an illness and dropped out of the Davis Cup. So it's a bad spot for him. Perricard, if there's one thing he's good at, it is hard-court serving. And when I mentioned that, once again, Misolic is really not worth a damn on hard court. Maybe a breaker or two might be frustrating watching Perricard return, which is never fun. But plus 143 for straight sets, fading a guy who has not won a hard court match in basically 2 years is a great price. I'll take that. That was on Bet Rivers, I believe, at 143. Give me that. I think it's a great price. I think he should win in straight sets. So once again, my picks here for the lock and dog, going with Chengdu in both of them, just based on coincidence. For the lock, give me Norrie in straight sets here at minus 142. And for the dog, give me Perricard straight sets at plus 143. It's going to wrap it up for the show. But once again, for the quarters in Chengdu and Hangzhou, don't forget to support the show by like subscribing on YouTube. And a reminder, we're back once again in a couple days. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.